My boyfriend mocked me in front of everyone, humiliated me, and left me to pay the bill. But when his life fell apart, he begged me to take him back. At my boyfriend's birthday party, I was supposed to be celebrating him. Instead, I became the joke of the night. The restaurant was packed. His friends, his co-workers, even his boss were there. Everyone laughing, drinking, having a great time. And then, someone handed me the envelope. Inside was a fake love letter from me. Badly written. Embarrassingly desperate. Filled with cringe-worthy lines about how lucky I was to have him. I didn't write it. But everyone thought I did. Because Nathan, my boyfriend of 2 years, was standing on a chair, reading it out loud. Word by word. With exaggerated voices. Mocking me. And everyone? They were laughing. At me. I felt my stomach drop. My hands clenched under the table. I looked at Nathan, waiting for him to stop. Waiting for him to say it was a joke that went too far. But he didn't. He kept going. Louder. And then, he looked right at me and said the worst part. I mean, let's be honest, she should be grateful I even date her. A roar of laughter exploded around me. My face burned. My throat tightened. And then? I simply stood up. I picked up my glass. And, in the calmest voice I could manage, I said. A toast. To the last time you'll ever see me. Nathan froze. The table went quiet. His boss's smile faded. And before anyone could react, I turned, walked out the door, and left behind one final surprise. I didn't run. I didn't cry. I didn't give them the satisfaction. I just walked out. Calm. Silent. Leaving behind a stunned crowd. Nathan expected me to laugh it off. To play along with his humiliation. He had no idea I was already done with him. Because that envelope? That fake love letter? It wasn't just a random joke. It was his mistake. And he had no clue that, by the time the night was over, his life would never be the same. I stepped outside into the cool night air, my heart pounding. Not with sadness. Not with heartbreak. With focus. Nathan thought he was untouchable. He thought he could humiliate me in front of everyone, his boss, his friends, even people who barely knew me. But what he forgot. I knew everything about him. I knew his secrets. His lies. His biggest weaknesses. And the best part? I had receipts. Before I even got home, I sent out 2 messages. One to Vanessa, my best friend. The other to a number Nathan would never expect. His boss. Because while Nathan spent his nights bragging about his success, I had watched him carefully. I knew about the fake expenses. The office affairs. The side business he was hiding. And now? Now it was time for everyone else to know, too. By the time Nathan noticed I was gone, my plan was already in motion. His boss received an anonymous tip with just enough details to start asking questions. His friends got a group message exposing how he really talked about them behind their backs. And Nathan himself? He was about to learn what real humiliation felt like. Because I wasn't just going to walk away. I was going to rewrite the story. He wanted me to be the joke. Now he was about to become one. Nathan thought the night was over. Thought he'd had his fun. But while he was still at the party, basking in his own ego, his world was already falling apart. By the time he checked his phone, the messages had started rolling in. His boss. His coworkers. His friends. And none of them were laughing anymore. Nathan had spent years carefully crafting his image. The charming guy. The successful businessman. The friend everyone admired. But I knew the truth. His business success? A lie. His loyalty to his friends? A joke. His confidence? Built on nothing. And now, I was tearing it apart, one message at a time. Nathan had been skimming money from his company. Not enough to notice at first. Just little things, a client dinner that didn't exist, a hotel stay that was for work. But over time, it added up. And now, his boss had the receipts. By the time Nathan sobered up the next morning, the company had launched a full audit. And Nathan? He was in deep trouble. While his job was collapsing, his social life was crumbling too. Because the moment his friends read the messages I sent, they finally saw him for who he really was. Every insult. Every fake compliment. Every time he had used them. And now? They were done with him. One by one, they blocked him. Cut him off. Left him behind. Because nobody wants to be friends with a fraud. Nathan's first real panic set in when he tried to call me. No answer. Tried again. Straight to voicemail. I wasn't going to give him the satisfaction of an explanation. He humiliated me in front of a crowd. Now he was standing alone. And the worst part? He still didn't know what was coming next. Because this was just the beginning. Nathan had always been in control. Always the one with the last word, the final laugh, the power. Not this time. His job? Hanging by a thread. His friends? Gone. His reputation? Cracking fast. But he didn't know just how bad it was going to get. Not yet. By the time he got to work Monday morning, the office was already whispering. His boss wasn't smiling anymore. HR had pulled up every suspicious expense report. And his coworkers? The ones he had always belittled, talked down to, made fun of behind their backs? They were waiting to watch him fall. Nathan still thought he could talk his way out of it. But then the email came. An official meeting. With HR. With legal. And suddenly, his world wasn't just shaking. It was collapsing. The group chats were exposing everything. Screenshots of things he said. Lies he told. Promises he made but never kept. The same friends who once hyped him up were tearing him apart. He tried to reach out. To explain. To spin the story in his favor. No one answered. He was officially an outcast. For the first time in years, Nathan had nobody. Nathan was living a life he couldn't afford. The apartment? Overpriced. The car? Leased. The weekend trips? Paid for on credit. So when his paycheck was suspended pending investigation, the reality hit him. No income. No backup plan. Just a pile of debt and no way out. The same guy who once laughed at me for not being ambitious enough. Now couldn't even afford his own lifestyle. The calls started coming in. Not angry. Not demanding. Just desperate. At first, I ignored them. Let him sit in his own mess. But when I saw his name pop up on my phone for the 10th time, I finally picked up. Not to help. Not to comfort. Just to let him hear the silence. And then? I hung up. Nathan thought he had won the night he humiliated me. Now? He was the one begging for mercy. Nathan wasn't just losing. He was drowning. His job? Gone. His money? Gone. His friends? Gone. And now? Even his pride was slipping away. For the first time in his life, no one cared what he had to say. HR didn't waste time. The financial audit exposed everything. Every fake expense. Every shady transaction. Every lie. They didn't just fire him. They made sure he could never work in that industry again. Blacklisted. Burned. Unhireable. And the best part? His boss didn't even give him the courtesy of a private meeting. He was escorted out. In front of everyone. No applause. No sympathy. Just silent, satisfied stares as he took the walk of shame. The same coworkers he had mocked. Now watching him crumble. The same company he bragged about. Now treating him like a criminal. For the first time, Nathan was nothing. Nathan had no savings. No backup plan. His rent was overdue. His credit cards maxed out. His car? Repossessed. The same guy who once criticized me for not being financially independent. Now couldn't even pay for his own dinner. He had always acted like he was better than everyone. Like he was untouchable. Now, he was one step away from being homeless. Nathan didn't just lose his job. He lost his identity. The expensive suits. Gone. The VIP parties. Over. The lifestyle he built. Fake, and now destroyed. He tried to reach out. First to his family. Then to old friends. Then, to me. At first, I ignored him. But then, the texts changed. Not angry. Not blaming me. Just empty. I don't know what to do. I messed up. I don't have anyone left. And for a second, just a second, I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Then I remembered who he was. And I remembered what he did. And I put my phone down. Nathan wanted attention. Wanted someone to listen. For the first time in his life, no one was. Nathan had always been the guy in control. The one who laughed the loudest. The one who always had the upper hand. The one who could talk his way out of anything. But now? He had nothing. No job. No money. No friends. And worst of all, no one left to listen. For the first time in his life, Nathan was truly, completely alone. Nathan's landlord wasn't interested in excuses. No job. Not his problem. Nathan had 2 weeks to get out. The same luxury apartment he once bragged about was no longer his. He begged for more time. No one cared. By the end of the month, his things were on the street. The designer suits. The expensive furniture. The reminders of a life he could no longer afford. He tried crashing with friends. They weren't answering his calls. He tried staying at a hotel. His card was declined. Nathan, who once mocked me for not being ambitious enough, was now couch hopping, broke, and desperate. And no one was coming to save him. Nathan had hit rock bottom. So he did the only thing he had left. He called me. I let it ring. Then again. And again. Until, finally, I picked up. There was no anger in his voice. No excuses. Just defeat. He said he was sorry. Said he understood now. Said he wished he could take it all back. But here's the thing about apologies. They don't fix anything. Nathan wasn't sorry for what he did. He was sorry for what he lost. And that's not the same thing. So I took a deep breath. And I hung up. No words. No closure. Just silence. Because Nathan thought he had won that night in the restaurant. But in the end, I was the one who walked away. Nathan had nothing left. His job? Gone. His apartment? Evicted. His money? Drained. His friends? Vanished. And now? Even his pride was gone. For the first time in his life, he had to face himself. No lies. No excuses. No audience. Just silence. And he couldn't handle it. Days passed. Then weeks. Nathan tried everything to rebuild. He applied for jobs, no one hired him. He reached out to old friends, they ignored him. He tried to network, his name was already ruined. He had burned too many bridges. And now? There was no way back. But he still had one last move. And I should have seen it coming. It was late. I heard the knock on my door and knew. I didn't even have to look. Nathan was standing outside. Desperate. Cold. Lost. For the first time, he wasn't cocky. For the first time, he had nothing left to say. For the first time, he was just empty. He asked for help. Said he had changed. Said he understood everything now. But I had seen who he really was. And I knew the truth. Nathan wasn't looking for redemption. He was looking for a way out of the mess he created. And I wasn't about to clean it up for him. I looked at him. Really looked at him. And I felt nothing. Not anger. Not sadness. Not even satisfaction. Just indifference. So I stepped back. And I closed the door. No words. No final speech. No closure. Just silence. Because the truth was simple. Nathan had spent his life stepping on people. And now? He was the one left behind. Nathan stood outside my door. Silent. Defeated. The same man who once mocked me, humiliated me, laughed at my expense. Now? Begging. But I had nothing left to give him. No sympathy. No words. Not even anger. Just a door slowly closing in his face. Nathan thought there would always be a way out. A reset button. A second chance. A person willing to save him. He believed he could manipulate his way back, that his words still had power. But when the door shut, he finally understood. This wasn't just a bad moment. This wasn't just a rough patch. This was his life now. After that night, Nathan disappeared. No more texts. No more calls. No more desperate attempts to fix what couldn't be fixed. I heard from Vanessa that he had moved out of town. Now working a low-paying job. Living in a cheap motel. Surrounded by no one. The man who once thought he was above everyone was now beneath rock bottom. And the worst part? No one missed him. Nathan always thought he was untouchable. That no matter what he did, life would always bend in his favor. That he would always land on his feet. But this time? He never got back up. Because when you build your life on lies, eventually, it all burns down. And when the smoke clears, there's nothing left. Nathan didn't come back after that night. No more calls. No more texts. No more knocking at my door. For the first time, he had finally understood. There was nothing left to take. He had drained every friendship. Burned every bridge. Spent every last favor. Now? He was just another person struggling to survive in the mess he created. Weeks passed. Then months. Nathan became a ghost. People stopped talking about him. His old friends moved on. His name faded from every conversation. Until one night, out of nowhere, I got a text. Not from him. From Vanessa. She had seen him. Not in a bar. Not in a fancy club. Not in the places he used to boast about. She found him working in a small convenience store on the other side of the city. No confidence. No fake smiles. No crowd around him. Just Nathan. Alone. Quiet. Defeated. And the best part? He didn't recognize her. Or maybe, he just pretended not to. I never reached out. I never saw him again. And I never looked back. Because for the first time in my life, I was free. Nathan had spent years belittling me. Mocking me. Tearing me down. But in the end, I was the one who walked away whole. And him? He was just another reminder. That people who build their lives on lies, arrogance, and cruelty always destroy themselves in the end. Nathan was gone from my life. No texts. No calls. No last attempts to crawl back. And yet, even in silence, his downfall still echoed around me. I heard it in passing conversations. I saw it in old mutual friends who never mentioned his name anymore. I felt it in the complete and total absence of him. For the first time, he wasn't the center of anything. No more fake charm. No more empty arrogance. Nathan had disappeared. Months later, I ran into someone unexpected, his former best friend. We made eye contact across a coffee shop. He hesitated, then walked over. He didn't ask how I was. He already knew. Instead, he just shook his head and muttered, "Man. Nathan really screwed himself over, huh?" I just smiled. He kept talking. Telling me things I already knew. How Nathan never recovered his career. How he hopped between jobs, each worse than the last. How no one trusted him anymore. Then, the final nail in the coffin. Nathan was moving back home. To his parents' house. The same man who once mocked me for being a nobody now had to rely on the people who spent years making excuses for him. No career. No friends. No independence. Just a life that never went anywhere. I left the coffee shop without another word. I didn't check his social media. I didn't ask about him again. I didn't care where he ended up. Because the truth was simple. Nathan had humiliated me that night. He thought he had crushed me. Thought he had left me with nothing. But in the end, I was the one who moved forward. And he was the one who was trapped in his own failure. That was the last time I ever thought about him. And honestly, that was the real victory.